I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and we're back with another free pattern. This one is called Snowflake Day, so head over to fatquartershop.com, download your free pattern. Today we're using Urban Farmhouse Gatherings 2 collection by Moda Fabrics and Lisa Bonjean. We're going to be making a 9-inch finished block, and you want to pick two fabrics that have high contrast. I'm going to use 2600 Aurifil thread. Our wow factor on this quilt is going to be using this 2-inch foundation paper, so all of your points match. And with that, I'm going to be using the add a quarter ruler, it's the quick press seam roller, and this is going to be a breeze. So let's get started. When you download your free pattern, we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to take both fabric A squares for one block. We're going to cut that on the diagonal, and we're going to be using foundation paper, so it doesn't have to be 100% accurate. For this paper, I like to just pull one page out at a time and fold. This is our 2-inch finished. Put a crease on all 4 of these edges. I'm going to use this add a quarter ruler that has a paper edge, so it's easy to fold right there. Having those lines is going to help you as you're at the sewing machine. So I go ahead and do the creases now. And I forgot to mention in the last step that we're going to be using sew line glue, which is perfect for this paper. So the first thing you do is you're going to take your fabric F square, you're going to turn your paper over, put some glue, and put this fabric right side up, and just make sure that over your creases you have covered at least 1/4 inch away over the creases. So I'm going to set that down. Then what I'm going to do is turn that back over, and on the 2 and 3 I'm going to cut 1/4 inch away, so you'll just have a little bit to trim off, and that will save time on the next step. And this add a quarter ruler has this 1/4 inch lip, so if you go like this, it's going to stop, so you don't even have to think. So we've got that done. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim the last 2 sides also. And trimming it down to the correct size is just going to give you a lot less bulk, which is going to really help you with the finished block. Now from here we want to go attach 2 and 3, and that will be these triangles. So what I'm going to do is put some glue here. You don't need too much glue, that might be a little bit too much. I'm going to put this one here, and then I'm going to put this one here. When I stitch, I'm going to stitch directly on these 2 lines, but I am going to start and stop 1/4 inch away so that when I rip my paper out, my stitches don't come out. I'm going to be using a 1.5 stitch length and an open toe foot and colored 2600 Aurifil thread. So you can see that I have started and stopped a little bit before that drawn line, and I'm just keeping all of this in the back out of my way when I sew, and that glue is just keeping it in place so I don't have to use pins. And now we will press. So from here I'm going to use the quick press seam roller to press this flat. You can also use an iron, but I'm going to do this to save time. From here I'm going to clip off right at that 1/4 inch line the excess to get that out of the way. And then from here, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue here and a little bit of glue here. Line this up, just press it in place. And when I'm at the sewing machine, if you just keep these out of the way, it'll work just like we did. On this line, you're going to see that the line actually goes all the way to the edge of the block. So this one is a little bit longer, and again, you start a 1/4 inch before and a 1/4 inch after. From here, put your iron on non-steam and just press it nice and flat. I like to leave my iron on it for about 5 seconds. And I don't use the steam just so that it doesn't shrink with the paper. And now we're going to trim this down. So there's 2 ways to trim this. You can either just cut directly on this line, or you can put a 2.5 inch square ruler on it and trim all 4 sides. And you just put the ruler right on the lines of the paper pad. Once you've trimmed, you will be exactly a 1/4 inch away from your edges, which is going to give you that perfect block. Now you have the option of pulling the paper off now or later. I prefer to pull the paper off now. You're going to make 5 of these for each block. Now we're going to assemble a unit by putting a square and a square unit that we just made. We're going to add a fabric C rectangle to the left, press, and then to the top we're going to add a fabric B rectangle. And it is really important to go in this direction. What I'm going to show you is how to pin first. Before you go to your sewing machine, pin at each end. And we're going to sew on this line a 1/4 inch seam. We're going to stop, use our quick press seam roller, and add the other section at the sewing machine. I'm going to switch my foot to a 1/4 inch foot since we're going to be using a 1/4 inch seam. When you're sewing, you can either sew with this on the top, or you can sew with this side on the top, and when you do that, you can see exactly where your needle needs to hit so that your seam will line up perfectly. So we're going to try that method. Switch to like a 1.5 to 2.0 stitch length. And you can see that my needle hit exactly at the point. From here, just at my sewing machine bed, I'm just going to press, add this back to my design board, making sure it's going the right direction. I will add this right sides together, pin on each side. Then I will pin once in the center. And again, you can either stitch with this on top or this on top, and when you get to your point, just make sure your needle is going to hit right in that point. And you can see that my needle hit right at that point. And when you use foundation paper, you're going to get a much accurate result at these points. From here, I'm going to set my seams, which just means put your iron nice and flat on your seam. It locks in all your stitches. Then you'll press towards your gray fabric and just press and let your iron sit there for about 5 seconds. And you're going to make 4 of these for each block, and we're going to move to the next section. Now we're going to make our snowflake point unit, and this one you take your fabric E rectangle, take 2 fabric D squares, turn them over and draw a line from corner to corner with a friction pin. With the friction pin, the ink will disappear with the heat of the iron when we iron it later. From here, we're going to put this on one of the corners, pin it in place, and we're going to stitch directly on that line. So I'm going to change the foot back to an open toe foot. If you keep this pin in place, your fabric will be less likely to move since you are sewing on the bias, and you will get better results. And now we're going to go press this. Using scissors, I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch away from my seam. I'm going to set my seam. You're going to press this one on the left towards the gray. From here, we'll bring our design board back, add the second fabric E square to the opposite corner, pin in place, and we will go stitch directly on this line. When I add this second triangle, I do like to start where my previous one is. I feel like your fabric's going to move less than if you start over here on the white. Do the same thing, just cut a 1/4 inch away, approximately, set your seam, and this time we're going to press towards the white. And we're going to do this because when you join your blocks together, there is no sashing, and if you do this, your seams will match up nice. So just nice, and then you can actually turn your steam back on. And this is your snowflake unit, and we're going to make 4 of those for each block. I'm going to flurry to get this block done. So we're just going to build our block. I like to build it 1 unit at a time, and I do like to use design boards so I can carry it to and from my sewing table. So I'm going to start with a square and a square in the center. I'm going to add the snowflake centers, making sure that the white touches here. And then I'm going to add the corner units by putting the square and a square in the corner. So each of these go in the corner. So you can kind of see the X with your square and a square. So now what we will do is we're going to stitch down here with a 1/4 inch seam and down here with a 1/4 inch seam. But first, what I like to do is put them right sides together on my design board and pin. So I'm going to pin all the way up here. And on this one, you're going to see that we have points that hit here and points that hit this side. I'm going to try to just sew down this seam and hope that my points match. I think they will because we use foundation paper. And if they don't, we can just adjust. So we're going to carry the design board to our sewing machine, use a 1/4 inch foot and stitch all the way down here. We're going to chain piece where we leave stitches right between these, and we're not going to cut apart until later. I'm going to change to a 1/4 inch foot. From here, I'm just going to see if my points look nice, and they do. So we're going to take this to the ironing board and iron. From here, I'm going to set my seam again, and it's really important to set your seam, especially when you get to this step. Now we're going to press toward our snowflake units on both sides. So I'm going to press this one toward the white, this one toward the white, and this one toward the white. So from here, you can see that I still have all of these chain pieced together, which keeps it nice because then I can just pop it on my design board and the pieces go exactly where they're supposed to go. Now I'm going to cut these apart, and I'm going to put these fabrics right sides together and pin. And when I pin, I think I get better results. Some people prefer to pin and some people don't. I do think with a block with this many points, it is important to pin. You'll see that I remove my pins as I get to them on the block. So right before my needle hits that pin, I'm going to remove it. And here you can see your points. You can try to hit it. So I'm removing my pins so that I don't break my sewing machine. And as I am chain piecing, that is going to save thread each time. So we've got our rows assembled. We're going to do the same exact pressing where we press toward the white. So just do the same thing. Press toward the white, and you notice I'm not moving my iron around too much because that will distort your fabric. And I always think slow and steady is the way to go when you're ironing. And it looks really nice, and you can see how accurate the points are coming out with that paper. So now I'm going to actually leave my chains together, and I'm going to put one of these right sides together, and I'm going to pin on the ends and at this intersection. And sew, and then when I'm at the sewing machine, I will sew the seam and then add the second seam right after, and then we'll iron it all at once. And when I'm pinning, I like to put pins about every inch or inch and a half. And the way we've pressed, you will see that your seams nest. So the top seam goes to the left, the bottom seam goes to the right, and when you move that seam from left to right, it's going to lock. It'll stop. So you don't even really have to be looking at it for it to fit. So let's go finish our block. From here, I will just check to make sure I'm happy with all of my points. They're matching and all of these seams are matching. So I will just move to the other side, pin this row in place, and do the same thing on the other side. And my points look nice, so we can press. From here, I'm going to set both seams separately. And this is a really important step. You want to press away from the center. So you want this one to go this way. You want this one to go this way. So I'm going to finger press them in place and just move my iron along the seam. And when you flip that over, these should go in, these should go out, and that step is important because you can rotate your blocks so that these seams will nest and these seams will not. So as you put your quilt together, rotate all of your blocks, and when you pin these, all of your seams will nest and you won't have all of that bulk when you're assembling your quilt. I just know you're gonna love this snowflake quilt. Pick up your free pattern at Fat Quarter Shop. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.